Commissioner Keith Mark and Commissioner Will Carpenter on WebEx, and I think Commissioner Mark will be here shortly, and then Commissioner Lister will be on eventually as well. So I'm Whitney Dameron. I'm the Chair of the Wildlife and Parks Commission. Welcome everyone today. Commissioner Cross, please introduce yourself to our audience, and then turn it over to Bruce.
Emmerich Cross, Kansas City.
Bruce Riedel, Ellenwood.
Mr. Secretary.
Secretary Christopher Kennedy with the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks.
Stuart Schrog, Deputy Secretary of Operations out of Pratt.
Jason Dixon, CIO out of Pratt.
Megan Dieters, minutes.
And the rest of the staff don't have microphones, but they're here and we appreciate them. We'll hear from some of them as we start through the meeting here. Any changes or additions to the agenda from staff?
Not from our side.
Okay, very good. First thing we have is approval of our January 26 minutes. Everyone's had an opportunity to take a look at those. Would accept a motion on those.
Move for approval.
I will second that.
Any discussion online? Very good. All in favor, say aye.
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 Very good. Moving right along, number 5, department report, public hearing, administrative rules and regs. First up, we've got Brian Sowards, I believe, to talk about fishing, legal equipment, methods of taking. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. It's been a while since we talked about these, so I'll go back through some stuff, maybe a year or so ago, but I'll go back through some stuff. But this series pertains to 115.7.1, fishing, legal equipment, and methods of take. 7.4, fish processing and possession. 7.10, fishing, special provisions, and 18.8, retrieval and possession. And the reason for these changes is for KDWP to determine snagging locations for invasive carp, to help the department and engage the public, to assist the department in removing fish and increase the advocacy for the removal. Oh, I got a clicker. Sorry about that.
Just 1 second, Brian. I'm doing a new thing and trying to get it to share, right?
I did want to clarify for everybody in the public that we are here to vote on these 4 regulations today.
Right. Curtis explained that to me.
Okay.
So thank you, Brian.
Just a sec. Let me do this a different way real quick for this one so we can. Post why? Oh, wait. Okay, we should be good now. Thank you.
Yep. There again, there's the 4 regulations. And the first one, 115.7.1, the changes that we proposed adds non-sport fish and prohibited species as legal to snag in waters posted or designated for snagging of those fish. 7.4 just clarifies that dead prohibited species can be returned to the water. 7.10 clarifies that aquatic invasive species waters are designated by posted notice, allows KDWP to act quickly in response to these invasions. And 115.18.8 clarifies that live sport fish can be released if caught with any method other than bow fishing, gigging, or spear fishing. So those caught with snagging are able to be released. So the biggest one here is the 7.1, which allows KDWP the ability to post or designate specific locations for snagging of non-sport fish and prohibited species, which is currently only legal for paddlefish at designated locations. And if you'll remember from past workshops, the focus was on a 15-mile, the lower 15 miles of the Kansas River. That's where the department is currently, if this is passed, that's the first location the department is looking at posting or designating. And I'll go back through some of that stuff for that specific location. And this is for silver and big head carp. There's 4 invasive carp in the country. It's silver, big head carp, black carp, and grass carp. For the sake of this conversation, silver and big head carp are the biggest concern that we'll be talking about. And so what is snagging? What we talk about snagging fish, paddlefish, and now invasive carp. What is it? It's we define it as hooking of a fish in any part of its anatomy other than the inside of the mouth. And typically with fish of this size, like paddlefish or invasive carp, you're using some form of treble hook like this and just ripping it through the water in hopes that you snag a fish. Now, paddlefish and invasive carp are similar in that they're filter feeders. They're not going to bite traditional baits or lures. They just open their mouth and filter fish and filter out plankton. So snagging is necessary to be able to catch these individuals. It is illegal for anything other than paddlefish right now. So what are invasive carp? I described 4 species, but what exactly are they? They're native to large rivers of Eastern Asia. Again, big head and silver carp are what we're talking about here, and they're listed under the prohibited species list. They're invasive. Essentially, what that means is they're prolific spawners and breeders. They reproduce rapidly. They achieve great numbers in a short time frame. They, like I mentioned, they filter out plankton, so they filter out the base of the food web and disrupt that food web for the native species that inhabit the river. So they also jump out of the water 7+ feet. They'll jump out of the water. They're excited by boat motors, and they'll jump out of the water, hit people in the boat. It happens all the time. So they're also a safety concern. So they're an issue in the lower Kansas River. They do live for 30+ years, so they're an issue for a long time. They reach large sizes, 60 to 120 pounds. So that's a lot of biomass for a long period of time. That was an image of an example of a silver carp jumping out of the water, hitting a boater. A little history on invasive carp in the country and in the state. They're imported to Arkansas for aquaculture to help clean algae and vegetation from aquaculture ponds in 1972. In 75, they were found in the wild. They got out of those aquaculture farms. In 1980, reproduction was documented in the wild, and by 87, the first big head carp were found in the Kansas River. And then by 91, silver carp. If you remember what happened in 93, a lot of flooding in the state, a lot of flooding over dams, those sorts of things. So they allowed big head carp to migrate over the Bowersock Dam in Lawrence. And 6 big head carp were found upstream of that dam. In 2010, silver and big head carp achieved great numbers in the Kansas River, and even more so today. The red arrows here show the distribution of these silver carp in the state. Northeast Kansas, those are the Kansas River and larger tributaries to the Missouri River on the far northeast corner there. Southeast corner, that's the Neosho River. Currently, we only have big head carp in the Neosho and in very small numbers. The location we're talking about is the last 15 miles of the Water One Dam. This is the highest abundance of silver carp in the state other than the Missouri River. And it's from the Water One Dam. So it's basically the Kansas City area of the Kansas River. There just shows the Water One Dam and on down is that location we're talking about. So a little bit about the human component of this, of the carp snagging. We measured it with a survey in 2022. We first wanted to just get an idea of what kind of users we have in that Kansas City area of the Kansas River. So we want to know, are anglers using this area? Doesn't do us any good to open up an opportunity like this to help remove invasive carp if nobody's using the river in this area. And also, do they have a use for these carp? So with the survey, we were able to determine some of those things. Those points just show where anglers were surveyed. As you can see, those three areas, there's very limited access in this area of the river. So there's a few boaters that we surveyed, but mostly they were in these access areas where they could access the shoreline. What we saw was 80,000 angling trips annually in this 15-mile stretch of river, which was astounding. For comparison, there's 120,000 trips at our largest reservoir, Milford Reservoir, annually. So almost comparable to Milford in terms of use. We also wanted to survey the public perception of carp in the river, kind of determine if there was a use. And what we determined is there's some favorable and unfavorable and less favorable aspects to silver carp from our public. But what was interestingly is most often they were seen in a favorable light as a use for bait for other fish in the river, specifically a budding blue catfish fishery in the lower Kansas River. So we do see that there's a lot of people, there's a lot of users in the area, so there's potential for this opportunity, and they have a use for these silver carp. So it seemed like a good opportunity for snagging at this location. And so the department set out to do a pilot study to determine what kind of success you could expect when snagging at these locations. And also, what kind of bycatch are you catching? Because that's often a concern, right? Okay, you intend on snagging paddlefish or silver carp, but what kind of bycatch can the angling public expect? And so these are the results. There was 36 person hours extended towards this pilot research project. And in total, invasive carp were snagged about 1 per hour of snagging activity. Whereas any other fish species, whether it's channel catfish, garb, paddlefish, drum, shad, it took about 5 to 10 hours to snag one individual of those other species. So bycatch fairly minimal. This is another way of looking at it in a pie chart. The majority of fish snagged during this pilot project were invasive carp. And, you know, there's still 36% of bycatch, but the makeup was multiple species, not just one species. So any effect it might have would be spread across different species. So back to the talk about the pros and cons of allowing carp snagging at this location and maybe even other locations in the future. But this location specifically, the pros are there's 80,000 angler trips. There's a lot of users in this area, so there's ample opportunity for something extra. Carp are numerous, like I mentioned, the most numerous in this section of the river other than the Missouri River. So there's ample opportunity. You cannot catch them with traditional gear. You'd have to snag them, and they make an excellent bait, and those users want that bait for a blue catfish population in the lower Kansas River. And the majority of fish you could expect the public that are partaking in this activity would be invasive carp and not bycatch. Some cons, there is more potential for illegal movement of these fish and potential for carcass littering. Both are illegal, but there is more potential for those activities. And just to reiterate, commissioners, that what you're voting on, I shared this at the front, but 7.1 adds non-sport fish and prohibited species is illegal to snag in waters posted or designated. 7.4 is just a clarification, adds dead prohibited species can be returned to the water, which should help us with that littering issue I mentioned as a con earlier. Just to clarify that, yes, if you snag a carp, you kill it, you can release it to the water. You can't throw it on the bank, that's littering, but you can release it to the water, or of course take it home. 7.10 clarifies aquatic invasive species are designated by posted notice. And 18.8 clarifies that live sport fish can be released if caught with snagging or any other gear besides bow fishing, gigging, or spearfishing. That's all I have.
Thank you, Brian. Commission have questions for Brian before we vote on these proposed regs? Anyone online, Jason, have a question from the commission? Or anyone else?
I do not have anybody online.
Okay. With that, if the commission's comfortable, I would accept a motion in a second.
Move for approval.
Will second.
Any discussion? I think we need a roll call vote on this, as I recall, Megan,
We need a roll call vote on each regulation.
individual.
Yes.
Okay, let them roll.
First on 115-7-1. Commissioner Carpenter,
You might just be logged in and not.
Commissioner Cross.
Yes.
Is Commissioner Lister online?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Lister.
Yes.
Commissioner Mark.
Yes.
Commissioner Rydell.
Yes.
And Chairman Dameron.
Yes.
Passes 5-0. Next, we have 115-7-4. We have Commissioner Cross,
Yes.
Commissioner Lister,
Yes.
Commissioner Mark,
Yes.
Commissioner Riedel,
Yes.
Chairman Dameron.
Yes.
Then for 115-7-10, we have Commissioner Cross,
Yes.
Commissioner Lister,
Yes.
Commissioner Mark,
Yes.
Commissioner Riedel,
Yes.
and Chairman Dameron.
Yes.
And finally, 115-18-8. We have Commissioner Cross,
Yes.
Commissioner Lister,
Yes.
Commissioner Mark,
Yes.
Commissioner Riedel,
Yes.
and Chairman Dameron.
Yes.
All pass 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we've got Tom, talk about waterfowl season dates, bag and possession limits. Tom Bedrowski.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, visiting and viewing public. I'm Tom Bedrowski, the Migratory Game Bird Program Manager serving out of Great Bend, Kansas. Today, we'll be discussing Kansas's 2026-27 waterfowl seasons. In the briefing item, you'll find the basis from which Wildlife and Parks develops its recommendations for Kansas waterfowl season dates. It also includes the federal frameworks, wildlife and parks season setting decision-making process, and the department's recommendations and other pertinent material. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service develops frameworks that establish maximum bag and possession limits, season lengths, and the earliest and latest closing dates. Again, the briefing item contains how the federal frameworks are developed and the framework restrictions. States must operate within these frameworks when establishing state-specific migratory game bird seasons. States can be more restrictive than the federal frameworks allow. The setting of waterfowl seasons is a biopolitical process balancing not only biotic factors but also social implications. Season dates are a preference for where, when, how, and what one hunts. The department's overall season setting objective is to allow season dates that allow the greatest opportunity for participation and harvest for Kansas's diverse waterfowling communities. When developing waterfowl seasons, KDWP evaluates a variety of considerations, deriving their season dates recommendations on spatial and temporal distribution of waterfowl abundance, timing of potential high hunter participations, peaks of harvest opportunity, landscape, climatic factors, as well as incorporating input from the hunters themselves. With stabilized federal framework since the incorporation of adaptive harvest management in 1997, KDWP is striving to establish greater consistency in its season date selections. KDWP incorporates decision tools to assist in their season setting process by identifying important season date parameters for each of Kansas's waterfowl seasons. The displayed matrix lists those priorities for each season and zones in order of priority. This process has developed season selection stability, reduce bias, and to add transparency in the season date selection. The next series of slides will be representing KDWP's recommendations for each of Kansas's 5 waterfowl seasons. This includes September teal, duck, merganser, and coot season, goose seasons, youth, veteran, active military personnel, waterfowl hunting days, and extended falconry seasons. We'll begin with our earliest season, September teal. This season is to provide hunting opportunity for species that typically migrate prior to the opening of any other season. In Kansas, on average, about 25,000 teal are taken during the season, but however, this can range for as high as 41,000 to the low as 13. Due to the 2025 breeding index for blue-winged teal being below the 4.7 million threshold, the federal frameworks only allow a 9-day season similar to last year. As you can see in Table 1 of the briefing item are the historical season dates and their harvest. KDWP recommends adopting a 9-day season with a 6 teal daily bag limit for the season dates for the low plains to run from September 12th to September 20th, and in the high plains, which would be the area west of 183, for September 19th to September 27th. As mentioned earlier, federal frameworks for ducks have been consistent remaining in the liberal regulatory package since 1997. There is no change in the federal frameworks from last year. KDWP remains adopting the maximum federal frameworks for daily possession limits, bag limit, and shooting hours. This would include a bag limit of 3 northern pintails, which would be an increase from Kansas' past season of only 1. For the High Plains unit, we recommend adopting a 96-day season with season dates of October 10th to January 3rd, and then January 22nd to January 31st. The High Plains unit was established in 1972, and it allows 23 additional hunting days due to differential harvest of western central flyway stock of mallards. For the early zone, we recommend a 74-day season with season dates of October 10th to December 6th and December 19th to January 3rd. For the late zone, we recommend again a 74-day season with season dates of October 31st to January 3rd and January 23rd to January 31st. For the southeast zone, we recommend a 74-day season with season dates of November 7th to January 3rd and January 16th to January 31st. The January 31st is the latest allowed by the federal frameworks this year. We recommend an 88-day season for white-fronted geese and a 105-day season for all other goose species. We recommend adopting the federal maximum daily bag limits for all geese with the exception of Canada geese to remain at 6 Canada geese per day. On the screen and in the briefing items are the recommended season dates. Special youth waterfowl seasons were initiated in 1996. Veterans and active military special use days were first offered in 2019. We recommend to hold 2 consecutive days for youth, veterans, and active military, and those days to be held simultaneously. We recommend holding those 2 days 2 weeks in advance of the low plains duck zones and 1 week prior for the high plains unit. This recommendation would be similar in structure to the 2025 season. Consistent with past seasons, we recommend a 15-day falconry season in Kansas low plains zones. Due to the Migratory Bird Treaty Act's 107-day restriction of hunting days, for additional hawking days are unavailable in the high plains unit. Listed are the department's recommendation for the 2026-27 waterfowl season in table form. As previously mentioned, we incorporate structured decision-making tools to assess and season date selections. In review of migration patterns, harvest, hunter activity, habitat conditions, weather patterns, holidays, hunter surveys, hunter communications, and other variables, KDWP believes this structure provides the best overall opportunity for participation and harvest for Kansas watering fowling communities. Action on final season dates will be required at today's meeting in order to meet the May 1st U.S. Fish and Wildlife U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service deadline to be published in the Federal Register. As last year, at last year's commission meeting, there was considerable discussion regarding the pintail bag limit. I have included a few slides to provide some additional information. The department's recommendation last year and this year is to increase the daily bag limit from 1 to 3 birds per day. This increase in bag limit is a result of a new harvest strategy that now allows 3 pintails per day in the federal frameworks. This strategy replaces the 2010 strategy using new advanced models that now link hunter regulations to how hunter harvest impacts pintail populations. The strategy is a result of a 5-year collaborative effort among the U.S. Geological Survey, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Canadian Wildlife Service, and the 4 flyway councils. System change on the breeding grounds, migration, and wintering areas has caused steep declines from peak populations in the 1950s. As you can see with the graph, major declines occurred in the 1960s and another sharp decline in the 1980s, both associated with droughts on their breeding grounds. Pintails are one of the earliest nesting waterfowl with preferred nesting habitat in short grass habitats. And like with many North American ducks, the prairie pothole region is being the most productive area. Due to a variety of drivers, the prairie pothole region has lost capacity to produce high pintail populations. Changes in agricultural practices such as tillage management, crop varieties, federal agricultural programs like soil bank and conservation reserve programs, as well as drainage of vital semi-permanent wetlands, has greatly changed the nesting landscape and the potential for population. The result in lower population threshold and the capacity to reach 1950s levels may now be unattainable. Realization of lower continental capacity and the ability to better understand how harvest dynamics led to a need to rethink pintail management. The new derived harvest strategy is a state-dependent model in that it specifies pintail harvest regulations as a function of the breeding population size and latitude. The strategy calls for a closed season whenever the observed breeding population size falls below 1.2 million, noted by the dark area in the blue. In the figure, the vertical axis is the population size and the horizontal axis is the settling mean latitude of the breeding population. Within the matrix, the outer white contours represent what the season would look like 90% of the time, and the inner circle would be about the 50% prediction interval of a particular season package based off breeding population and latitude. Simulated expected model performance will result in an average breeding population of 2.01 million birds with a mean harvest of 467,000. Listed are the expected frequency based on simulations. While it may be counterproductive to increased bag limits on a population that's below historic levels. Strong evidence suggests that at the prescribed levels, harvest has minimal impact due to the compensatory nature of pintail harvest at certain levels. Kansas has the most restricted daily bag limit on the continent. Adopting a 3-bird bag limit would put Kansas in line with other states, with only Minnesota and Louisiana having restricted limits. Minnesota allows 2 birds per day, and Louisiana allows 3 per day, which only one can be a hen. And Canada, since 2020, hasn't had an 8-day bird per limit. On average, Kansans harvest around 6,000 pintails, comprising about 3% of Kansas's duck harvest, making them the 5th most harvested species in the state. Timing of harvest is bimodal, with a peak in late October and a smaller secondary peak in late January. Varying by year, Kansas harvest comprise 1 to 3% of the total U.S. harvest, with California being the greatest, and then the Central Flyway, North Dakota, and Texas. While harvest may be low, the pintail is still considered a prize bird, particularly in the late season when drakes are in full plumage. In short, the new strategy is both biologically and socially responsible. Well-established long-term monitoring of both population health and harvest will ensure sustainability. And with expanded hunting opportunities, it reduces regulatory complexities that can make compliance difficult, particularly with the 1-bird bag limit, particularly in early season when birds are not in full plumage. And with that, I gladly stand for any questions and remind the Commission that action is needed today by a consensus vote.
Questions by the commission? Anyone or online? Questions from our commissioners?
Doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like it. And I don't have any hands up, so.
Okay. As I recall, a year ago, we had this discussion, as we discussed, Tom, it seems counterintuitive that there's pressure on pintails, yet we're increasing the bag limit, but it seems the surrounding states and Canada have higher limits. Most of them, the 3-bag limit.
So we are penalizing Kansas hunters, and and the biological impacts would be minimal on a national scale.
Very good. You've changed my mind from a year ago. So is this a roll call vote or just a consensus of?
Just should be a consensus vote.
Very good. Any further discussion? Okay, commissioners, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Very good. I think we're at 4-1. Thank you, Tom. Next up, we have regulations and promulgation. Martin, you're going to take that? Somehow the secretary let Curtis take a vacation, so our chief counsel is not here, but Martin will fill in.
Thank you, Chairman.
Put your legal background hat on one more time.
This is not on. Is it on? All right, thank you. Thank you, Chairman and Commission, Martin DeBoer, Chief of Staff and Legislative Liaison.
Oh, here. I'm a commissioner at the commission meeting. Here. Thank you. I'm participating online because I'm late. Don't tell anybody. I think they'll figure it out here really shortly.
Commissioner Mark, you're not.
Sorry about that.
You're not muted.
Apologize. Coming
You're okay.
through security right now and had to declare.
All right. I'll just give a quick overview of the regulations and promulgation. Currently, we've got 115-2-1, which is a night vision hunting and duplicate boat decal fees. This has been completed through promulgation and will be voted on at the June 18th commission meeting. 115-2-2 and 2-3, these are the park fees. They've completed the promulgation to the point where the statutory ratification process is in, and I'll touch base on that. There was a bill that was required to continue the ratification on that, and I'll go over that here as we go into a legislative agenda. And with that, Chair, I'll move into the legislative update.
Very good.
All right. So first off, I'd like to say thank you and on behalf of the agency of the support of the commission and the commissioners on the legislative agenda going into this session. Through the legislature, we have been successful on all of our topics. Two of those have become law, signed into law. Three of them have been rolled up into one bill, and I'll touch on those here shortly. First, I'll touch on HB 2511. This was the Agriculture Production Fund bill, allowing the agency to shift state agricultural production funds between state properties, allowing us for greater flexibility and to use those. That passed the House 122-2, passed the Senate 140-0. And it was signed by the governor and it'll take effect upon publication in the statute book, which is typically July 1st. There was an amendment to that made, and this was agreed to between the department, Kansas Farm Bureau, and the Kansas Livestock Association to identify that specifically be used for habitat management. SB 364 is the reinstatement of the senior and kids licenses. This bill passed the House 101-23 and 40-0 in the Senate. It will reinstate those senior 10-year licenses at not to exceed 1/8 the fee of a general combination lifetime hunting and fishing. It did change the kids portion on the statute. So it's going to maintain for ages 5 and younger to not exceed $300, but then it's going to extend the age range that a child can receive a license. Currently 6 to 7, it'll extend it from 6 to 15. And the license fee will change not to exceed $400 for those licenses. And it also removes the sunset provision that was in that statute so that these will be ongoing and perpetual. This bill has also been signed by the governor, and it will take effect upon publication in the Kansas Register. Those publications happen on Thursdays. This morning, I did not see it in there, so possibly in the next week that will become law officially. The final bill that we are still currently waiting on, it has passed both the House and the Senate. It is currently on the governor's desk waiting for her signature, is HB 2507. Now this bill, and I've provided you with a supplemental report there. All of these bills and everything can be found on the legislature's website, but also on the agency's website. We do have a legislative tracker under the news and then legislative news. You can see some of the bills that we've been tracking and it'll link to those. But this bill is a roll-up of the waterfowl stamp, migratory waterfowl habitat stamp, and the signature removal, the Kansas Open Records Act exception for precise data location for T&E species, as well as the camping fee ratification bill. So the waterfowl stamp that was originally 2507, they lowered this created a resident and non-resident stamp. It lowered the waterfowl habitat stamp for residents from $25 to, well, originally it was $8. We proposed 25. Down to 15, so now the resident is 15. The habitat stamp for non-residents is going to be set at a minimum of $100 and with a maximum of $200. And that passed the House and the Senate. This bill also includes the CORA exceptions for the T&E's precise data location. There is added language in there by the legislature that the precise location of the species can be requested for disclosure by a landowner, the landowner's lessee, or the designees regarding such person of the property owner. So if the person owns the property, they can still request that data and receive that from us. This also includes the ratification of the camping fee regulation bill. Because of the RAINS Act, and we met that threshold, it paused the current promulgation process of the camping fees until this bill was passed. It passed the legislature, so all three of those topics are rolled up into HB 2507, which in that bill passed 120-4 in the House, 29-11 in the Senate, and is on the governor's desk pending her signature. There were plenty of other bills throughout the session. Those can be found. I won't touch on them as they did not move forward. A lot of bills showing support for the agency. We have had a lot of very good conversations with the agency, laying groundwork for future discussions. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Questions from the commission for Martin? I don't believe so, Martin.
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to make a comment about 2507 and in specific, the non-resident waterfowl stamp fee that the governor may or may not sign. Hopefully she will. As we know, we've had discussions about the Rains Act here that the legislature adopted several years ago, which puts restrictions on any rules and regulations that increase cost to the consumer, to the public for implementation of $200,000 a year or more, or $1 million over 5 years. I think there's an argument to be made that the legislature essentially superseded the Rains Act by granting us the authority to impose a fee of a minimum of $100 to a maximum of $200 that we could immediately go to $200. I'm not sure if Chief Counsel Wired agrees, but I would like to encourage him to have a conversation with the Office of the Attorney General about that and get their opinion, either informal or formal. And if he has a comfort level that that's something we can do, either request a formal opinion or move forward and ask for forgiveness, I guess. But I know we've had challenges dealing with the non-resident issue, and it's encountered some opposition to how we proposed solutions in the past in the legislature. Excuse me. But notwithstanding that fact, virtually all the other states from Canada to Mexico have adopted restrictions on non-resident, which has, since we are lacking in that regard, has led to greatly increased pressure for Kansas and for our Kansas residents that enjoy waterfowl hunting. I know later on the agenda, we have some other issues related to this that the commission is or the secretary's office is bringing forward, and look forward to that discussion as well. But I just offer that as a comment of my opinion. I think we ought to at least see what we can do, assuming the legislation is passed or signed into law. So with that, if anyone else has a comment now or down the road, it might be something that we want to revisit as well. Okay. General public comment. We do this twice in the agenda, as most of you know. And so those who want to address the commission and the secretary and staff, please come forward, identify yourself, and tell us what's on your mind. Podium is open. Stunned. Anyone online?
I do have one online.
Okay, very good. Let's go with that.
Mr. Osborne, I'm going to ask you to unmute. So you should be good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Commission. My name is Bill Osborne. I'm a third-generation resident of northern Miami County. Our family farm adjoins the Hillsdale Lake property, and I recently attended a seminar on the value of reestablishing native grasslands. Some of my land is being devoted to this effort. I would be interested in the Commission's thoughts on such efforts within the Hillsdale Park and public access areas and other similar areas across the state. While some conversion is being done, a significant amount of land is being degraded with invasive species. I do ask within the context that resources are always a concern, but it seems that priorities may need to be revisited for this effort. I'll stand for your comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I would invite the secretary or deputy secretary if you have comments on this matter, or we can follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Deputy Secretary Stuart Strog. Mr. Osborne, I appreciate the comments. I'll admit I'm not too familiar with what you're referring to. If Connor, State Park Director, has any knowledge, if not, we would be glad to get your information and circle back with you and have a conversation. I'd be interested to learn more what you're talking about, sir.
That sounds good. I'll leave my contact information in the chat with Jason and look forward to hearing from you at some point in the future. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else have a comment at this point in time? Doing good.
Not at this point.
Okay, Mr. Secretary. On to you. Secretary's
sir.
comments.
Mr. Chair, thank you, and Commissioners, appreciate the opportunity. Good afternoon. It's nice to have this opportunity to speak to all of you all today. I want to begin by acknowledging a few important points from earlier this morning before we turn to our attention to what's ahead. As you heard from Martin, we've had meaningful success in the legislature this session. We saw several important wins, including adjustments to state park fee funds, a return of a 10-year senior license, expansion of the children's lifetime license, and the establishment of the non-resident waterfowl hunting stamp. These accomplishments reflect a strong partnership between the Commission and the legislature, and I want to thank you both for working with us throughout this process. The fishing regulation that you all the fishing regulation change that you all just voted on gives us an opportunity to utilize an important tool to protect our waterways. It also positions us to respond more effectively to evasive threats in the future. This proactive step will help serve Kansas well. And of course, with respect to waterfowl, it is important that we get these season dates set so that hunters and our staff can plan for the upcoming season. Having that clarity helps everyone prepare. I also want to thank everyone who's already stepped up for public comment. We only have one this morning so far. But what I want to do is encourage you all to continue to bring that public comment forward. The Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks provides services directly to the public. And because we are funded by the fees they pay, it is imperative that we consider the public's opinion as we make our decisions. There will be another public comment session later this afternoon, and I encourage everyone to speak up. In addition to public sentiment, we rely on research and data to drive our decisions, and you'll hear more about that from our staff today. We will be discussing several important topics: turkey seasons, deer seasons, waterfowl hunting, and the use of trail cameras on public lands that KDWP manages and stewards. These topics are complex, and people are definitely passionate about them. At this time, public input is one piece of a much larger picture that we have to consider. As an agency, our responsibility is to balance those perspectives with biological, economic, and operational data that will guide sound wildlife management. Our staff will walk through this information today, and the recommendations reflect the full scope of what we must consider to make the decisions that serve both our resources and the communities. Thank you again to the Commission. I look forward to the upcoming conversations and hearing from staff presentations. Your engagement as we review these topics together will guide the best possible outcomes for wildlife, our lands, and our communities. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Do we have questions or comments from the commissioners for the Secretary? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Down to informational items, general discussion. We'll talk about a potential turkey fall season. Jake George. Welcome.
Okay, looks like we're up and running. Thank you, Chairman Dameron, commissioners, and our participating members of the public. As the chairman said, my name is Jake George. I'm the Wildlife Division Director for Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, located in Pratt. Based on recent requests to review the feasibility of reestablishing some form of harvest opportunity for fall turkey hunting, we've added KAR 115.25.5 and KAR 115.25.6 to the agenda as general discussion items for this meeting. Today, I'm going to cover briefly a refresher on the history of wild turkey in Kansas, a review of past changes and the rationale for those changes, discuss briefly the adaptive harvest strategy that was established as a decision support tool, and outline some options for consideration and comments regarding the potential reestablishment of a fall turkey season. So overcoming a reduction to 30,000 individuals across the continent by around 1930 from an estimated 10 million birds that were present at the start of European settlement, the restoration of wild turkey is considered one of the most successful wildlife conservation stories in North America. They're extirpated from Kansas by the early 1900s, and wild turkeys crossed into Kansas from Oklahoma in the 1950s and established an isolated population along the Arkansas River in 1962. Following a series of reintroductions of Rio Grande and eastern wild turkeys via interstate translocations by KDWP, spring hunting season was established in 1974, and a fall season was initiated in 1979. The number of permits issued in the spring rose from 400 and permits by the year 2015. So turkey populations in Kansas have declined greater than 40% since 2008, according to the spring rural male carrier surveys. Similarly, the species population reconstruction results that were initiated in 2022 indicate that the abundance of male turkeys in 5 of the 6 management units peaked in 2013 at an estimated 160,299 birds, then declined about 23% to 123,963 birds by 2019. This decline is not a Kansas-only phenomenon and has been occurring range-wide for turkeys, beginning in the southeastern United States and progressing north and west over the past 20 years. The fall wild turkey hunting season was closed in 2023 due to the potential for additive mortality for females, declining overall turkey numbers, and had support from the hunting community at the time, which has a strong preference for spring harvest opportunities. Kansas is not the only state in the region to reduce opportunities with declining bird numbers. Nebraska, Oklahoma, and many other states have recently limited opportunities for turkey harvest as well. Recommendations for changes that are put forward by the agency come from a multifaceted process, which includes review by the experts who make up the KDWP Turkey Committee. The KDWP Adaptive Harvest Strategy is a decision support tool, and based on the best available science and data from our research and survey projects and from data in the peer-reviewed and published literature. The KDWP Adaptive Harvest Strategy, which I will discuss in more detail shortly, does include a means for increasing opportunities and harvest when bird numbers and harvest success levels reach thresholds that justify an increased harvest. So what we do know is that we've seen low and declining production over the last 20 years, as seen in the graph here, which, while at varying levels by region, has led to overall population decline statewide. Seen here are the abundance index represented by turkeys per 100 miles from the spring rural male carrier survey on the left, and production index in young per 100 adults from the summer rural male carrier survey on the right. These trends are also evident when we look at the data by region. Here are the eastern 2 management units, the central management units, and the western management units, all with decreasing production and subsequently decreased abundance. As stated previously, these declines are not limited to Kansas, as evident here in the population trends from Kansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma, all seeing similar peaks and then declines over the last 20 years.
Hey, could you back that last slide up, please?
Yep.
Okay.
Metrics or methodologies for the observations on those are different. You'll see Oklahoma's total birds observed, Missouri's observations per 1,000 hours, and Kansas's turkeys per 100 miles. But what you're looking at there is really the trends in those. There may be different methodologies for tracking, but the trends over time or indices are similar.
Yeah, I just wondered why we were peaking. It looks like Missouri was peaking about the same time we were. And then Oklahoma carried their high populations all the way into like,
Yeah,
you know, and you're saying it's the methodology of the count, you think?
it could be, yeah.
10-year difference though, but I
Yeah.
just wondered, yeah. Do we know anything about like drought or rainfall down in Oklahoma that might account for them sustaining their population for 10 years longer than the other two states?
That I don't. I'm not even sure that they did, based on the differences in the survey methodologies.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
All right, moving on, the adaptive harvest strategy, which was provided as a handout there, was developed as a support tool to aid in harvest decisions with the intent of conserving populations during declines and attempting to maintain resident spring success rates at acceptable levels. So the adaptive harvest strategy is based on harvest efficiency or success rate in lieu of harvest rate as a percent of the population, based on the assumption that greater densities of turkeys increases contact rates and thus hunter success. This assumption holds up given how well resident hunter success rates have mirrored population trends. While the percent success rates established as triggers have been criticized in the past as somewhat arbitrary, that really isn't the case at all. The thresholds or triggers for movement were set at a time when overall success rates had been higher than 60% for nearly a decade. And we were attempting to maintain success rates and hunter participation at those levels. So the question really becomes, are these thresholds the right levels of success that we should be shooting for? Or to put it another way, what rate of success is acceptable to our resident hunters? By the numbers, I'd say that we were pretty close to the mark. Success rates dropped below 55% when populations were declining, and when success rates dropped below 55%, resident permit sales or resident participation began to decline precipitously. So given low production and population declines, are we ever going to see a time when our harvest success rates are back to the desirable levels seen 15 to 20 years ago? I will say there is hope. The percentage of all turkey hunters filling their permit was 53.6% during the 2025 season, which is the highest overall success rate since 2015. And with improved production over the last 2 years, we anticipate that success rates will increase again this spring. I will say anecdotally, reports on harvest success from the youth opener this past weekend have been excellent. With that said, let's move on to the requested review for the reestablishment of a fall turkey season, starting with an overview and timeline of recent changes. Based on declining populations and subsequently resident hunter success rates, several steps were taken, which incrementally reduced the opportunity for harvest in the fall over the last decade. In 2016, the fall bag limit was reduced from 4 to 1 bird, except in the North Central unit. The following year, that North Central unit was also reduced from 4 to 1 bird. In 2019, the fall season was shortened from 123 days to 41 days. And then in 2023, the fall season was suspended altogether. For reference, while there was a very slight increase in hunter participation in the fall season from 2021 to 2022, which was the last year the fall season was open, this was following a long period of steep declines. In 2022, there were less than 2,500 resident fall permit buyers. As participation and population levels declined, estimated harvest rates for the fall did too. By 2020, the estimated fall harvest statewide was only 318 birds, representing a success rate of just over 10% in the fall.
While outside of our normal recommendation process and not consistent with the recommendations of our existing management plan, in the interest of maintaining our cooperative relations with the commission and to be responsive to requests on the matter, we were asked to review and identify potential options for the reestablishment of a fall turkey season for your consideration and comments. The two potential options now on the screen and also included in the third page of the handout there are very similar, but with one major difference. So to begin with, where are the options similar? Both options would reestablish a fall turkey season that would run from October 1st through December 31st, excluding the rifle deer season. Both options provide the opportunity for resident-only harvest of one bearded bird, so no hens, in the fall within units 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. It excludes unit 4, which is closed in the fall. The difference between the two options is tied to additive mortality within the overall harvest. Option 1 has the potential to increase total harvest by allowing for the take of one bearded bird in the fall and one in the spring. Option 2 would maintain existing overall harvest while providing the opportunity to take a bearded bird in the fall by making it a single permit, which was good for the fall or spring season. The permit would be valid from the fall to the close of the spring season. So why the two options? While the removal of the option to take hens in the fall with the reestablishment of a season does abate concerns regarding impacts to production from the fall harvest, the fall harvest of bearded birds, even if minimal, does have the potential to impact success rates the following spring. There will be no recruitment of new birds on the landscape from fall to spring, thus any bird harvested in the fall is one less that will be available for harvest in the spring. And while interest in harvest in the fall were low in 2022, we don't know how the reestablishment of a fall season might impact this level of interest from hunters. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that there's a third option, which is the status quo or no fall season. The two options presented are specific to the request regarding the reestablishment of a fall harvest opportunity. So next steps, we'll be soliciting further public input on the reestablishment of a fall season and the two options that were identified today over the next couple of months. Further discussion and presentation of that collected information will be included at the upcoming commission meeting in June. And in the meantime, we're continually reviewing ways that our monitoring and strategies could be improved. The ongoing research project with the K-State Co-op unit is going to provide a wealth of information as to what the most important factors are that are impacting population growth. Our intent is to utilize this data to help inform any future adjustments to our management approach and/or changes to the adaptive harvest strategy. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to stand for any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jake. Question, I had an inquiry on this from an individual who suggested, whether it's option 1 or option 2, the season run to January 31st with upland bird hunting restrictions. Thoughts on that? Pro, con, good, bad, indifferent?
Yeah, I mean, there's already opportunity for overlap there, and I think initially it had been scaled back when there was still a fall season before it was closed to run October 1st through November 10th, I believe it was, somewhere in there. So the intent was there was no overlap there. The majority of it, we don't have a lot of the traditional fall hunting where birds are broken up, so much of it is opportunistic hunting, much of it by archery deer hunters who have the permit in their pocket in case a turkey came by their stand. Not a whole lot of opportunistic take, I don't think, with respect to upland bird hunters who may have a dog that points one. But there already is some overlap there, obviously, with it going through December 31st. So that's something we can discuss with staff and come back to you guys with. So.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the commission?
I have one. Based on past harvest in the fall, what would you anticipate if we were to allow an extra bird in the fall? What would be the impact in the department's opinion based on science and past practice? What would be the impact on overall turkey population leading into next year as far as ongoing recruitment?
Right. Well, if you're basing off of 2022 numbers, which were pretty low, we're talking 318 birds. So you're talking probably 1 to 3% of what's harvested in the spring. So it is pretty minimal.
If we go back to kind of the heyday years, when we were shooting more birds in the fall, what impact did that have, or none? Basically, the toms that were taken out during the years where it was
Yeah.
toms only.
I would say
was there
that
minimal impact,
The
or
more impactful portion of it would be the fact that hens were able to be harvested, and those accounted for 30-some% of the take in the fall. So that would have a direct impact on production. Removing that abates those concerns.
just from the department's position, do you see potential negative impact if an additional tom was taken in the fall at the level that you would anticipate that would be taken? Or would it be pretty
Yeah.
neutral, or what's your opinion?
Yeah, to the not a population impact, no. The only impact that we see as identified would be potential reduction in spring harvest success. And I think that would be minimal.
Okay.
Other commissioners have comments? Do our commissioners online have comments, Jason? They raising their hands at all?
It doesn't look like it.
Okay. Anyone from the public want to comment on this path we're starting, I guess, today? Okay. What do you need from us? Is this something that will be brought back in a potential regulation form at our next meeting? And
Yeah, we'll be conducting a couple of public meetings for additional comment on it between now and the June meeting. Have a summary of that information as well as any additional options that you'd like for us to explore and provide comment on between now and then. And it'll be in the workshop session at the June meeting. So.
Okay, Jake. Thank you for your time. Let's go ahead and get into waterfowl stamps and then probably take a break after that.
Okay.
How about that, Jake? Non-resident waterfowl stamp fees. Jake Jordan.
Yeah, and I'll be covering a little bit more than that. Covering 115.2-1, which is our fee regulation, and the requisite changes from legislation that passed this session. Some of this will be a little bit duplicitous to what Martin already covered with the legislative update, but it's going to include changes to the fees for the state migratory waterfowl habitat stamp that were included in House Bill 2507, and changes to the senior lifetime pass and youth combination lifetime license that were included in Senate Bill 364. While we are waiting on the signature on 2507, we went ahead and added this to the agenda for general discussion so that we could move it into workshop with the hope that the signature happens. So we're going to go ahead and discuss some of that today. The non-resident waterfowl stamp fees, the legislation established separate fee caps for residents and non-residents. So previously it was $8 whether you were a resident or a non-resident. The resident cap was set at $15. A non-resident minimum was set at $100 and the non-resident cap at $200. The changes related to 2-1, including creating the separate issuances for residents and non-residents, and then adjusting the fee for the non-resident stamp to the minimum $100 is what's currently being put forward. No change to the resident. It would remain at the $8 at this time. On the 10-year senior license, we're once again able to offer the 10-year senior pass. This is a combination hunting and fishing license for residents who are 65 years of age or older. And the fee for that one is by the bill set not to exceed 1/8 of the fee for a general combination lifetime hunting and fishing license. And further details regarding that fee will be put forward at the June meeting when we workshop it. And with the youth lifetime licenses, as Martin indicated, there's no change for age 5 or younger. That remains at $300. The changes include an extension of the eligible age for the permit and a reduced fee. So what was either 6 or 7 years at a fee of $500 will be changed to 6 to 15 years at a fee of $400.
And there'll be more to come on these, and additional details, and markup for the June meeting when we workshop them. With that, I'd stand for any questions on those.
Questions on those two issues from the commission? Nothing online?
Nope, nothing on.
Any comments from the audience on that? Very good. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
We're moving right along, but why don't we take 10 minutes and we'll come back and crank out the rest of the agenda. Good to go?
Yep.
Welcome back, everyone. Looks like we lost a few, but the heart of you are still here. We're now ready for the workshop session. Levi Jaster is going to talk about deer seasons on military units. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, waiting on slides here, so. Good. All right, so today I'm going to talk about KAR 115-25-9A, which is the military subunit deer seasons, bag limits, and permits. So we have 3 different subunits in Kansas: Fort Riley, Fort Leavenworth, and then Smoky Hill Air National Guard Range. We have this regulation to differentiate seasons and bag limits on those subunits from our statewide seasons to hopefully provide better hunting opportunities around Department of Defense activities. Those properties are there to help further their missions, but they do provide that extra opportunity. And so when sometimes their activities would prevent a lot of hunting activity on them, on those properties. And so this regulation helps us work with them to avoid that. The subunit deer management goals may differ too on the base. And so this helps them achieve their goals without having to make broad sweeping changes to our statewide seasons or leaving them in lurch with whatever we've got. And then historically, this regulation had been used to make changes to statewide seasons after KAR 115-25-9, which is our statewide seasons, had been approved. We had been working with the bases or the subunits here recently to go to durable language with this. That was something that was requested by the legislature in a JCAR meeting. Rather than seeing this every year, if we can go to durable and only change when we've got to adapt to the DOD's schedule and their needs to that, we should try to go that way. And so after some work and quite a bit of back and forth, especially with Kurt Wired on getting this done, we've come up with some durable language for this regulation. And so rather than reading that all directly, which would put everybody to sleep or confuse everybody even more, because it took quite a bit to get around some of the dates and what they're currently desiring. I will work through each of the subunits for their durable languages, just a quick summary of what that'll be, and then give you the actual dates that'll be in effect this year. So the big one for Fort Riley, their regular firearm season, they want to begin the 3rd Saturday of December, and then it'll either end on December 31st or after 12 open days. 12 open days is the total number that is allowed for the statewide season. So each of the base or the subunits are limited to that. Or the 31st, because using that 3rd Saturday in December, some years there's only 9 open days that would be there. They also are excluding December 24th and 25th as closed days. So no firearm deer hunting on Fort Riley during that time. But it's important that we end all antler deer hunting at December 31st. So that's that limit. So some years may only be down to 9, but most years it's going to be at least 11, if not 12 days available to them. And that's also different than what's in your the briefing book, because there was some confusion on the Fort Riley staff's part as to how many days they actually had available to hunt. And then in coming up with our durable language, we, instead of ending on the 29th, we bumped it to the 31st or 12 days. So it's a little different there. It just means there's a couple more days this year to hunt at Fort Riley with firearms deer. And so their firearms antlerless whitetail They have a few additional days of this too, and so they will begin that the Friday following Thanksgiving, and it'll run for 3 days. And then their January season would start on January 1st and end on the second Sunday after the third day of January. And that language is actually taken directly from our mid-length January antlerless season in our statewide regulation. And that odd after the third day of January is put in place to maintain that the shortest January season is never less than 3 days long. We did have a couple of years where if we ended it on the first Sunday in January for the short season, you get a 1-day season because January 1st is a Sunday. And many people wanted, more opportunity to hunt than that. So that third day, make sure that we maintain that, but then that affects the middle and the longer seasons too. So it comes into play. So their regular firearm season this year would be December 19th through the 23rd and the 26th through the 31st. And then their antlerless firearm seasons would be November 27th through the 29th and then January 1st through the 17th of 2027. That would bring us then to Fort Leavenworth subunit. Theirs is a little longer because they split most of their firearms season into onto the weekends, so Saturday and Sunday. So it's split into 5 segments. The first segment begins the second Saturday prior to Thanksgiving and is 2 days, so Saturday, Sunday. The second segment begins on the Saturday prior to Thanksgiving and then ends 2 days, including the open days, so Saturday, Sunday. Their third segment begins on Thanksgiving Day and runs for 4 days through the following Sunday. The fourth segment begins the second Sunday after Thanksgiving because the first Sunday is included in that Thanksgiving 4-day segment. And 2 days again. And then the fifth segment begins the third Saturday after Thanksgiving for 2 days. So that weekend. Their whitetail antlerless only season begins on the January 1st with all the rest and ends on the third Sunday after the third day of January. So that's that long season whites there. And again, that's just the language taken directly out of our statewide regulations. So already been through this process. And then their extended archery whitetail antlerless only season begins the third Monday following January 4th. So that makes that fit with that odd wording to get that to match it to start the Monday following the January firearm season. And then that always ends on January 31st, which is our last day of deer hunting possible in Kansas. And so to give you their actual dates, again, firearm season is several weekends and then the Thanksgiving holiday, 4 days. So November 14th through the 15th, November 21st through the 22nd, November 26th through the 29th, and then December 5th through the 6th and 12th through the 13th. And then their January antlerless season is the 1st through the 24th of 2027. And then their extended archery season begins the day after that on January 25th and runs through the 31st of 2027. So then that leaves the Smoky Hill Air National Guard Range. Their durable language is really easy. They just want to follow statewide dates like they have been for quite a while. But they have an option if something comes up that we can adjust with this regulation. So they're going to stick with the statewide dates for now, which means their firearms season is December 2nd through the 13th, same as the rest of the state for our things. And so with that, I will stand for any questions. Thank you.
Questions for Levi?
How big is that subunit 10A? Just curious.
It's not terribly big. I don't know for sure off the top of my head exactly how many acres it is, but
No big deal. Just curious.
No comments from the commission. We have comments from the public. I'd say as a follow-on, it was suggested to me that there may be interest in bringing legislation that would allow the commission to promulgate these kinds of regs without going through the JCAR process and just do them all right here. So we do have a comment. Okay, yes, sir. Please identify yourself for the audience and thank you.
Commission, thanks for having us. Thanks for letting me speak. I'm currently here representing myself. I'm stationed on Fort Leavenworth, Unit 10 Alpha. Been there for 7 years, active duty service member, and hunt a lot on Fort. So to answer your question, I don't have exact acreage, but I do know that our post is broken up into certain units that you can and can't hunt. There's one unit that you can hunt with a rifle, and that's roughly 2 miles by 2 miles. Gives you a size of the peninsula down by the airfield on the Missouri River. The rest of the unit, we have about 4 areas that you can hunt with shotgun or archery, because it's close to what we call the cantonment area, an area where houses are. There could be kids walking, so not allowed to use a rifle there. That's just a general comment, give you the scale of 10 Alpha, Fort Leavenworth. I would like to say I appreciate the commission and the department working with the fort on those specific dates. As you saw at Fort Leavenworth, it's broken up over weekends. I know it's not sometimes easy in the regs, but from the population on that base, there's a lot of students. Over about 80% of the population are students who are there for a master's producing program, a collegiate level program. So they can't take, liberty or leave during the weekday because they're in class. So that's why they maximize the use of the hunting days during the firearm season on the weekends. That allows us to give those students an opportunity to go out and recreate and do things on the weekend, but still meet their academic commitments during the weekdays. So again, I just wanted to appreciate, I know that's a lot of different dates. It does a lot of coordination, but it really helps individuals that are on the post who still want to recreate. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get your name, please, for?
Christopher Watkins.
Thank you, Christopher.
All right, and I believe we're looking for the commission to approve moving this forward in promulgation too, so.
By consensus? Is that what we need, or I don't think we need a formal vote, do we?
Formal.
What's that?
Formal voice vote,
Voice
so
vote, yeah.
we.
Okay, if there's any discussion, there's a motion
I would motion to approve.
and second to move into promulgation.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Thank you, Levi.
Thank you.
Deputy Secretary Schrag, we're going to talk about first non-resident waterfowl hunting on public lands, I believe.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Stuart Schrag, Deputy Secretary of Operations. I appreciate the opportunity to once again stand before you and discuss waterfowl hunting on public lands, a topic I've been discussing a lot for the last 5-6 years. I'd like to do a quick recap of where we've been and where we are now. It was during the 2020-21 season when we saw a significant increase in the number of non-residents coming to Kansas to waterfowl hunt on our most popular and intensively managed wetlands. With that increase in non-resident hunters, many Kansas residents started expressing fairly heavily strong concern that they no longer had a place to hunt waterfowl on our public lands that they historically had. These concerns also include the ability to pass on waterfowl hunting traditions that Kansas have established, as well as retaining our dedicated resident hunter base. Public land managers and wildlife biologists across the state were also expressing concern relative to the pressure as waterfowl behavior and use of our managed wetlands was being altered. Resting and dietary needs of waterfowl continued to be a concern. And at the time, we were questioning, is this just a moment in time that was sparked by the pandemic, or is this the new norm? Well, I think we found out it is the new norm. Since the 2020-21 season, we have seen a continual increase in the number of non-resident hunters coming to waterfowl hunt on Kansas public lands, and pressure on our Kansas residents and on the resource has not lessened. During the 2017-2018 season, we sold around 9,800 waterfowl stamps to non-resident hunters. In the 2024-25 season, non-resident stamp sales almost doubled to just over 18,000 sold. During the same period, 2017 through 24, resident stamp sales have remained steady at anywhere from 22,000 to 24,000 stamps sold annually. Sales to non-resident waterfowl hunters now comprise 43% of all Kansas waterfowl stamp sales compared to just 24% in 2007. And as I'm mentioning the stamp sales, I'll kind of reiterate what Jake and Martin talked about earlier with the legislative action this year regarding the state waterfowl habitat stamp. If you remember, this was part of our big picture initiative 5 years ago as a means that could alleviate some of these non-resident pressure issues. So as an agency, we are very glad to see that it's gotten to this point and are anticipating the governor's signature to move this on forward. And so once that happens, we will be coming back to the commission to work on those, setting those fees through the commission process here in the near future. While we have researched and proposed some options over the past several years that would restrict non-resident waterfowl hunters on our public wetlands and potentially reduce these pressure concerns, we have been unsuccessful in implementing anything to date. But our goal has remained the same, and that is to reduce pressure on our waterfowl, on our resident hunters on public wetlands. So I'm coming to you today with a new recommendation in a phased approach. So what we're looking at here is under our public lands special use restrictions reference document under our access restrictions section. What we are proposing is what's listed up here on the screen as phase 1, that non-resident hunters must be off the following public properties by 1 p.m. during active waterfowl seasons. Those include Cheyenne Bottoms, Jamestown, McPherson Wetlands, Neosho, and Meridazine. The 1 p.m. restriction for non-resident waterfowl hunters at select properties does not apply to the September teal season or spring snow goose conservation order season, nor shall this restriction apply to the KDWP Special Hunts Program or other department authorized waterfowl outreach programs. For the purpose of this regulation, waterfowl includes ducks, geese, mergansers, coots, rail, and snipe. Non-residents can hunt other species on that property of the 5 that I just listed: small game, big game with obviously the proper licenses and permits, or waterfowl hunt on other non-designated public wildlife areas or private property after 1 p.m. Or they simply could go back to town and spend money in the local economy. Exempt from this regulation, as to mirror some of our others, licenses would be non-resident lifetime license holders, non-resident full-time students, non-resident active military personnel, and immediate family domiciled with them. And while we don't believe this is a long-term solution, we do feel like it could make a quicker impact that we see now versus years from now. So this is a subject we've been talking about, as I said, for a long time. We've discussed a variety of access restrictions for non-residents. So we have workshopped this topic a lot. This 1 p.m. restriction is just a build up of the other access restrictions that we have proposed in the past. So are there any questions regarding phase 1 up to this point?
Questions from the commission?
I have a couple.
Sure.
Why are certain locations included and there are some not?
I appreciate that question. That was one of the things that internally we really discuss a lot. The 5 main that I listed are the main wetland properties that are intensively managed that most people think of when they think waterfowl hunting in Kansas. We have data, long historical data on those 5 properties with the check-in system, and before that even paper card surveys as to what the non-resident and resident hunting pressure has been on those properties. That is something, you know, that's why we started off with the 5 properties. We think, you know, I don't want to necessarily call this a pilot program, but it's a good starting point because those are the 5 main wetland areas. We do acknowledge that there are other properties that we manage that do receive pressure as well.
My suggestion would be, why pick winners and losers in the state for residents? Because if you only do 5, then we're gonna have some residents that are near the other properties that are exempt. And I can foresee that's gonna be a drawing card to these out-of-state hunters. If we think this is a good idea, which, you know, just kind of off the top of my head is a good starting place, I would not understand, and I think we're gonna have a lot of Kansas residents upset if we pick winners and losers because of certain places. I think if you put something in like this, it ought to be statewide, not just 1, 2, or 3, 5, because they are the biggest. Because if we're gonna try to really protect Kansas residents and Kansas hunters, this ought to be a statewide program.
Yeah, I appreciate that input. Part of the conversation also included the larger federal reservoirs, you know, that are 8,000, 9,000 acres, and the ability to spread the pressure out there. We felt, you know, we didn't feel as strong as including those properties just because they are larger properties with a lot of shoreline and a lot of coves where you could spread that pressure out.
Yeah.
But to your point, we did discuss other properties too.
Is that a done deal or?
No, this is not. And, you know, this is the time and the place to discuss things like that. So.
On letting them hunt other species after 1 o'clock, how are you gonna distinguish that they're not disturbing the wildlife, the local the resident hunters that are there? I mean, if we're gonna limit it to 5 properties, I think they should just be completely off of those 5 properties after that
I appreciate.
established time.
Right, I appreciate that input, and that, which was also a topic we discussed as well, whether we, you know, we tried to be as amenable as possible to everybody with this, but yet still addressing the pressure issue, and didn't feel at the time strongly enough to say, no, you need to be totally off the property and give them an opportunity to go hunt rabbits or pheasants or something like that. But I do understand your point.
Yeah, I don't think we're gaining anything if we're still leaving them on the property, and whether they're harassing the other hunters. We've heard enough stories of that. I'm sure you've heard many more than I have.
Yeah.
But
It also depends on the size of the wildlife area that we're talking about too. You look at Cheyenne Bottoms, you know the bottoms very well. I know there is a lot of pheasant hunting that occurs there, and I get your point that if they're done hunting waterfowl at 1, they could go pheasant hunt those dikes and, you know, then levees. But we felt like this was a good starting point, but I do appreciate the comments, and I was hopeful for additional input today, so.
I mean, would they be allowed to fish?
Sure.
Again, I can see where you run into the problem if they're still on the water. So, I mean, maybe you add a line in there that they must be off the water by a certain point in time. Because if they're fishing in or around the resident hunters that we're trying to protect, again, I get, and I'm sure the rest of the commission will agree with this, I get multiple calls a week on this topic. And it's not 60-40. This is 100%. We've got to fix this. And what are you guys doing? If you don't fix this, I don't think this, I mean, I'd rather pass nothing than something that is good. You know, I mean, good law is great. Good legislation is great. Just trying to appease by doing something, I don't think is, I think this is a great framework to start the discussion. But we got to figure out how to get these folks off the water. I mean, if this was what we had to work with, I would say off the water by noon. I would add that to this, if this is the direction we're going to go. And then that way it's clearly enforceable, you know, and then maybe add something in there with regard to hunter harassment that, you know, if you're harassing people that are engaged in hunting on the water, you know, then there's got to be something punishable there. So somebody just can't go fish near the decoy spread of people that are on the water. I could see that still being a problem, especially with it. I mean, I could recount, and I'm sure everyone up here can, story after story of these resident hunters telling me, and my son and I feared for my son's life because these out-of-staters were threatening and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and it goes on and on. And so I think we need to fix all the problems. And then my last comment on this is, I don't think we should exempt non-resident lifetime license holders. Because then what's gonna happen is you're just gonna sell a bunch of non-resident lifetime, because these people that are traveling, I don't think the money's the issue. I think we should charge them $200, which they'll readily pay. And what they'll do is if you put this noon exemption in off the water, they're just gonna buy lifetime license
Well, they
and
have
take
to,
advantage of the,
they have to buy that before moving out of state to
okay,
Cape-
how many are there then? What's the number on that? I'd be curious, because if it's not many, and if that's the rule now, then great, that would alleviate my concern on that.
I'd have to go.
But they
follow up.
can't, an out-of-stater can't
Right.
buy it now?
Right.
Okay,
They
great.
cannot, yeah.
Great, I'm staying
Mike,
corrected on
I had
that.
a follow-up question. Restriction on the water, would you also include the large reservoirs too?
I
Or are
personally,
you talking about the smaller wetland?
I would be open for discussion if you can tell me some rationale of how we spread them out on the large federally managed reservoirs versus, all the other ones that are state properties. I mean, I'm not, I haven't made my opinion on the large reservoir, but I think all the state places that we have, top to bottom, ought to be on here for sure,
Yeah,
especially the small ones.
when you look at the call miles or feet of shoreline at Cheyenne Bottoms per pool versus a Cheney Reservoir at 9,000 acre over a longer distance is what I was referring to, and being able to
Mhm.
spread them out easier.
You know what I would, because I don't really know enough about that to know the answer to that. I'm sure we've got some waterfowl people in here that, or at least online, that probably utilize those other places, and I'd be curious to see if they're good with those being exempted out, or not. I'd be open to public comment on that, because I don't know enough to know enough.
Right, and I do appreciate the input. That's why we're here. I'll throw this in there. I hadn't gotten to it yet, but the goal of today was to try to get to a point where we could actually, since we've talked about this for so many years and worked access restrictions for non-residents for all these years, to get to the point where you all would agree, we get to a place where we could agree to go ahead and send this to promulgation today. And then during that time frame, still conduct some public meetings and provide input on what was presented today to maybe implement this by the October regular duck season of 26 was the hope for today. So I just wanted you all to be aware that that was my goal for today with these discussions. So, Mr. Secretary, do you have anything to add?
I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Mark. We definitely internally went back and forth with a variety of options. I probably am more like you. I would rather see us go all the way than stringing this along any further, and so I definitely appreciate those comments. I mean, I'd like to hear from the commission. If you all want us to take this back and go back to the drawing board on it and come up with something that is more final, we can certainly accommodate.
Well, I'll speak for myself and say that I look forward to public input, comments here today, as well as what the commission does going forward, soliciting public comments on this. I would support moving forward with this if there's opportunity to continue to make changes throughout the process. We can consider those, but if not, if this is kind of a best and final for 2026, then I would support moving that forward. I think from my discussion with people, some of the challenges that we have addressing the non-resident piece is they come to Kansas for perhaps a day, a weekend, extended periods of times, or what. They start hunting, they have nothing else to do. So they hunt all day. They maybe go to town for lunch, but then they come back and hunt. Most of our resident hunters have jobs and lives and things, and they might get up before dawn and go out and hunt. And then, 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, they're heading back to town and going to work. And they probably don't come back at the end of the day either. Some would. But that constant pressure all day long, as we've heard from people who have spoken to us a number of times, changes the flight patterns, the feeding patterns. It's disruptive to the birds. So I appreciate what we've been presented today. I like what I'm hearing. I like the direction. I think if we can get 2507 signed into law and move forward on that as well, there's a couple of things that we're doing to improve the situation for our Kansas residents. And I know the non-resident lifetime hunting license, we make a contract with people. If you spend that kind of money and leave the state, you can always come back and hunt, and we like that. And there's not thousands and thousands of those people that would come back and causing us this issue.
Yeah, and I withdraw my comment on that. If that's, I was unfamiliar with how that works, so that alleviated my concern. Thank you.
So those are my comments. Other commissioners have comments, but I think we want to invite the public to comment as well. If either of our commissioners online have a comment, Jason?
Well, they both turned their cameras on. I'll let Delia go. She looks like she unmuted there.
Yeah, I think I fall in line with what you said, Whitney. I like the holding it after 1 o'clock and then also giving a chance to kind of keep going here. Let's see what the public says, and yeah, everything you said. I don't know if that made any kind of sense, but yeah.
Well, you said you agreed with me, so it made total sense. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Carpenter, is he on or any
Yep,
comment?
he's there now.
Are you looking for a vote?
Not yet, but
Okay.
hold that thought.
Well, I think anything we can do right now, you know, this issue has been out there for a while and we need to do what we can as soon as we can.
Further comments from the commission?
Yeah, Whitney, I would echo your comments, but I would also, you know, I'm just thinking, if I'm a non-resident and I drive from South Carolina to waterfowl hunt, I'm waterfowl hunting. And I'm a little, to Commissioner Mark's comments, I would agree that if we're just picking and choosing, I'm gonna hunt that, but then if I gotta get off at 1, I'm gonna find the nearest other place that I could waterfowl hunt as well, because of the time and energy and the mobilization, you know, and cost it did to get up here. That's just that's my 2 cents on that.
We talked a lot about that, and that was how we came around to, because you asked the question, Commissioner Mark, why not just do it statewide? Why not do it over all of our public areas? And we wanted to keep some semblance of opportunities open for hunters, just in that scenario that, hey, I still want to hunt, I'm here, where else can I go? And we do have, you know, other smaller areas, lesser intensively managed areas where the behavior of the birds isn't being as severely as impacted as some of these larger areas. And that's why we came up with that idea. Okay, we'll do it on our major intensively managed wetlands rather than just doing a blanket statewide.
But if we think that, Mr. Secretary, then what, with all respect, then you're going to encourage that. I say if you ban them, you know, completely, then what they're going to do is they're going to go hunt a pizza parlor or a local restaurant, or some of the mom and pop stores in these small communities to buy something else. And so we're going to, you know, take advantage of their tourism dollars, and we're not going to sick them on places that we don't include here, because I promise you what's going to happen is your phone and my phone is going to ring off the hook this hunting season with people in those areas that we didn't protect saying, heck, you sent all these people into my neck of the woods. It's Commissioner Cross.
You're pushing the problem.
Right.
Where you're pushing the problem.
And if we wrote this regulation with just those 5 areas in mind and ran into that problem, we'd be right back to this again in, you know, a year. And starting, is there a way to write the regulation where you could have an all-inclusive and?
There are definitely some other options out there. I mean, we even talked about different other options internally, like a draw system, which would be more of a long-term solution. But we're not ready internally to bite that right now. Our staff are overwhelmed with our current draw systems. And so that's what we were trying to look at. Okay, well, this could be a first step as we prepare our staff to really handle that increased workload internally that they'll receive as a result of us implementing a new draw.
I think going to a draw system is a smart idea. But, to Bruce's point, if we're gonna do it, so we don't have to piecemeal solving a problem. And I think Commissioner Cross, his comments were, probably more on point than my original comments. We should just put the blanket statewide. I think it ought to be noon, off the water by noon. I think we should change the 1 to 12, and make it all properties. And, we should solve some of the legislature's problems with regard to, it doesn't violate the Reigns Act. It actually helps tourism dollars because they're gonna be spending more time off the water, spending money. They still have ample opportunity. And it's not, as Stuart indicated, that all the other states around, virtually they all limit. And even Kansas ourselves, we don't allow non-residents to turkey hunt at all in the state. So if we can take a non-resident and say you can't turkey hunt, we sure can say, I would think we could say, you can't be on the water during waterfowl hunting afternoon. And all of the properties. That's what I think we should do. And then I think your idea of trying to find a more comprehensive long-term solution, whether it's a draw system, permits like big game or whatever, I think that's the right approach. But I think if we just tinker with this ever so slightly, I think you guys are onto something here. And I'd be curious to hear what the public thinks, but I bet there probably would be in line with this as at least a very good first step if we would tinker with this.
So, Mr. Secretary, if there's and I do want to hear from the public before we kind of come to a consensus on this, but if the majority of the commission would request the regulation be applied statewide, is that something that the commission and the department would proceed with, or would you take it under advisement, or how would you see that?
I would take it under advisement and our staff would investigate it thoroughly and we'd come back and lay the options out to you. I don't see it being a real issue.
Okay.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, to follow along that, with our goal today was to request promulgation so we could possibly get it implemented by the regular duck season. And without, maybe Eleazar can help with this too. At what point, if it's introduced in the promulgation process, can we still modify the recommendation before it's too late and totally has to start over in the commission process, I guess would be a question we'd have.
Well, the commission is asking us to go back to the drawing board on this. Is that correct?
I don't think so. I don't think we're gonna go back that.
I think, well, first of all, I'm curious to hear what the public thinks, but if the public is in line with what Commissioner Cross and Bruce and I are in, discussion about, then our ask would be that you tinker with this to meet the commission's recommendation and then send it through promulgation and let's get this in place this season. Okay. Not delayed, not kick the can down past today, but try to get it right. Not that this is wrong, but maybe more right, I guess would be what I'd say. But like Chairman said, I would be curious to hear what the public has to say too.
Stuart, I got one more question and point. Now, when you say off the water, I can see somebody getting on the bank and walking down the bank with a shotgun. Do we mean off premises, right?
Yeah, that was a big part of our conversation of how to define off the property, out of the wetland, like our 5 a.m. rule at Neosho. You can't step foot into the wetland until 5 a.m. We had those discussions too. Again, back to the Secretary's point, the reason why we didn't go with completely off the property is to provide additional opportunities for non-residents, also understanding the points you all have made here too. So trying to find that balance, that happy medium is a challenge.
Tough call, man.
Do you know what kind of numbers we have on non-resident deer hunters that actually utilize those public lands?
John, Jake, well, We'd have to, I can get that for you,
I
Bruce.
understand it's gonna affect the upland.
The problem
guys
is, we don't,
too,
yeah,
but,
not all of our
um,
wildlife areas have the check-in system,
Yeah.
so it just, we could do estimates based off of
Yeah, I'd
averages
just
on those
be
other
curious
ones.
how many people that would affect.
But they'd also have to have, that had put in for the draw and have a legal
Right,
tag, so
right.
that alleviates part of that problem anyway. I mean, it's like they can't say I'm out here, deer hunting if they don't had put in for the draw and drew.
But I think when you're talking about individuals being off the water or whatever, whether they're on the bank or not, if they're carrying around their shotgun with steel shot in it, it's a problem. Noon or later, 1 or later, or something like that, as opposed to off the water equipment in for taking waterfowl in the vehicle. So I think that's ascertainable by our game wardens. Yeah. Why don't we hear from the public and then we'll
Mr.
revisit
Chair.
this?
Commissioner Carpenter has something.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, guys. I am listening to your conversations. I agree with them 100%. So just count me in.
Very good. Appropriate for public comments at this point in time? Deputy
Absolutely.
Secretary? Okay. I think we have a volunteer this time. Please identify yourself and look forward to your comments.
All right, Mike Costelli. We cannot leave this meeting today without something in promulgation. We have June and what, teal season's 5 months away, guys. So we have June and August. That's it. We can't leave this meeting without something in promulgation. Done a lot of research on this. I have it all written out. A lot of this is verbiage is from Arkansas, so it's kind of good legal stuff. I have copies for everybody. I'd like to read it for anybody that's online, if I can do that.
Yes, sir.
Here's my proposal. Non-resident waterfowl shooting hours on all public lands will be from 30 minutes before sunrise and ends at noon. Non-resident waterfowl hunters must be off water inundated areas or natural man-made water courses by 1 p.m. Any scouting by all types of watercraft after 1 p.m. is strictly prohibited. And I give my exceptions for non-residents, for military, and for students. It's all written out. I've also, one of the biggest complaints is the sky busting. I have added a shell limit. I would love to have discussion on shell limits on public lands, but the feds are waiting for the state to make a decision. If you word it all public lands, the feds and the Corps can adopt this. You're going to kill the Corps, you're going to kill the fed areas if you only do the 5. You have to word it on all public lands. It's all worded just like that in my regulation. The feds are asking the state, do something, we'll follow it. You can't kill 8 Canadas on federal property. They're following the state law of 6, right? These guys are just going to jump from one area and go to another area. You can't let these guys run a boat and scout at 4 p.m., 5 p.m. as the sunset. I have it right here. It's strictly prohibited. Any watercraft on the area or anything after 1 p.m. So I'm asking you, amend it to noon and amend it to all public lands. It's just so easy for the Corps and the feds to adopt it. And you're going to have to get those guys on board because the lakes are just going to get killed on this deal.
Thank you, Mike. We have questions for Mike.
Why'd you
Give you a
pick,
copy of that, Mike?
Yes, I have a copy.
yeah, why did you pick 15 shells?
This is my personal, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing 4 guys from Louisiana.
No, I know,
go to the
I know your
plug.
argument, but why the number is my question.
Because
Why 15,
Arkansas
not
had
20?
that at one time.
And-
I would take 20. I would take a box. I would love to have discussion on that. but Arkansas at one time did 15.
Do you know why, if they had it at one time and then they lifted it, what was the,
I don't know, maybe.
was there a lawsuit on that, or
Mm.
was that, I mean, what, why would they, if
Maybe
they
Tom would know
implemented
more
it,
about
why
that.
would they?
Bird numbers went up.
How long was the 15 shell limit in?
Hold that thought, Chief. We're going to get you up here so that you can talk
Okay,
uh,
sorry.
to the public.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
I
not
would
that-
just like to have a discussion because all the sky blasts make these guys make a decision. Right now, it's just 200.
But you're not gonna die on that hill,
Yeah.
are you, today?
What?
You're not gonna die on the 15 shell limit?
No, no, this new enclosures means a lot to me and it's something that they're used to it in Missouri. They're used to it in Arkansas. This is not, we're not trying to invent something here. Arkansas is pretty much over at noon, back in the parking lot at 1 o'clock. No walking the levees, no scouting, just you're done. You're going to go back to the, to your hotel and you're going to go spend money. Right?
Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Mike. I'd like to get a copy too before you leave. And Mr., you can just give him the secretary, please.
Cheech, come on up, identify yourself for the commission and the public and weigh in yourself.
Good afternoon. Cheech Kehoe from Topeka. Hear this all right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to echo what Mr. Costelli said. It needs to be statewide on all public lands. Referencing the shells, I'll just let you know that there's still states where when you're on public lands, you're allowed 25 shells in certain areas that are managed.
That's everyone though, right? Not just out of state.
That is not just out of staters. There are places like Vermont, where when you go into their managed areas, you're allowed a box of shells. And that's a great idea because it eliminates some unethical shots being taken. If you have 5 boxes of shells, you're just sending them up there. And
Would you live with that as a resident?
yeah, I don't need more than a box of shells on any given day. Oh, I mean, for what I shoot.
No,
The
no,
thing is you can't go below 25 because snow goose hunters need, I mean, you're not going to kill 3 snow goose with a shot. So, and there's a 25 bird limit there. So I don't think we can go below 25. As far as, ending the hunting by noon and off the water by 1, that's great. He pulled up that information for you and that's great. What's going to happen if you go forward with these 5 areas is Clinton, Perry, Melbourne are going to be inundated with more hunters. And I got news for you. It's already crowded. It's crowded right now and it's only going to make it worse. So the proposal of 5 units, I strongly disagree with. That does not address the problem. It migrates the problem to the areas, because if I was coming from out of state and I could only hunt noon at Cheyenne Bottoms, then maybe I go to Perry instead and hunt Perry, because Perry's got some pretty good hunting, you know? What you've done is you've taken the best areas and you have now made them better with your proposal is what's real. The reality of it is that you've improved the hunting conditions on the 5 best areas in Kansas. And if I wanted to go from Topeka, I got to drive about 2 hours to McPherson ballpark. So, or 2.5 to Cheyenne. I can't go to Perry, which is 25 minute drive, hit one of those marshes and not see 7 trucks from out of state when I roll in. It would be, Mr. Secretary, it would be, you're migrating the problem to other areas of Kansas. This doesn't alleviate problem. It just changes the location of the problem. Whereas a statewide public lands regulations, stop hunting at noon, off the water by 1. Again, I lived in Vermont for 20 years. That was the rule on some of the public lands. You had to be out, you had to stop hunting by noon and be off the water by 1. And by off the water, you weren't allowed to go scouting. You could scout from the roads. You could drive around and scout, which is fine because you can see the birds, they're flying. You can see about where they're going to be, but you're not disturbing the resource, which is our priority here. Our number 1 priority is the resource, I believe. And to improve the resource, we need to let those birds feed and rest. Because if you're going to keep disturbing them, they're going to keep, and why are the birds in McPherson more entitled to rest than the birds at Perry? That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't, I guess the other thing I'm going to point out is if you were to do a statewide 1 o'clock ban, we still have more opportunities for non-residents to hunt in Kansas than they do in North Dakota, than they do in Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan has gone to 2 5-day permits in the fall. Okay. And the birds in Saskatchewan are a lot thicker than they are here. So non-residents are allowed to hunt 10 days total in the fall season and 5 days in their spring waterfowl season, which is really just snow goose season, the conservation. Now, North Dakota, our neighbor to the north, far north, they closed their non-resident. They don't start their non-resident season until 10 days after the duck season starts for residents. So those residents get to enjoy the marshes all to themselves for the first 2 weekends. And that's new this year. They've always started it, but now they've included a second weekend where residents only can enjoy them. I like this proposal. I like the proposal. I just need it to be statewide and off the water by 1. No hunting afternoon, can't shoot a gun. And I think you have the germ of a real good idea here, sir. And it's just the fleshing it out to make it statewide would really get it done. And I think everyone would benefit from it. The residents could still get out for an afternoon hunt if they wanted to. The non-residents can come here and spend their money, do some great hunting in Kansas, and then spend some money in town. It's a win-win all around. But if it's not statewide, all you're doing is making my life harder up in the Northeast here, to be honest with you. So I thank you all for your hard work on this, and thank you, sir, for your hard work. And
Questions or comments for Cheech while he's here? Thank you, sir.
thank you very much for your
Appreciate
time.
your input.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cheech, for the comments.
Any other public comments? Anyone online, Jason?
Not at this point, no.
Yes, sir. Come up here and introduce yourself to us, young man. This is the guy that's going to take over for Curtis Wired. Sorry, Curtis.
I'm just filling in for him today. My name is Eleazar Hazel. I'm a staff attorney with the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. Stuart asked a question about promulgation, so I wanted to come up and give the commissioners a little bit more information about that since my supervisor isn't here today. Specifically in 32805D, what's required is that any regulation that we're seeking to promulgate as the department comes before y'all and either receives an approval with modification, or a denial. It's pretty clear from the comments from the public that there's very significant interest in getting this regulation into promulgation as soon as possible. It also sounds like there are some concerns with the regulation that has been proposed by staff. There is still an option under the statute that you all could approve the regulation with modifications. So in order to move the regulation into the promulgation process, what we would need from y'all is some clear direction about how you would like the current proposal to be modified before it's entered into the promulgation process. Hopefully that makes sense and is responsive to Stuart's question. I'll stand for any other questions that y'all might have, but I will kind of flag for you all. I don't have as deep of substantive knowledge as our chief counsel does. I'm much more focused on rules and regs and policy, so I may not be able to answer some more specific questions, but at least when it comes to the procedural ones, I should hopefully be able to get you an answer.
Thank you so much. Questions for legal counsel?
No, but I do appreciate that input.
Yeah,
Thank you. It's very helpful.
thank you.
Mr. Secretary, I think if I can read the room, you might get a motion to modify this regulation. So why don't I turn it over to the commission and see if there are any recommendations coming forward?
Yeah, I would
Be put into the form of a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve with modification the proposal today.
As?
And the modification I would make is that instead of the limiting the exclusion, it would read statewide all public lands. And then commensurate with what, and I have been looking at other states, commensurate to Arkansas and other states, I would change the 1 p.m. to noon.
To know.
But
Did you like the way they had it in Arkansas where they off the water by 12?
Off the,
Yeah, stop hunting by 12, off the water by 1.
I'm good with that.
Had a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to get in the weeds just a little bit because we're going to need some clarity here.
Okay.
Can you bring the reg back up here so we can look at the exact language, please? So we can,
What we normally do, and was part of the last couple of proposals too, is we, instead of saying statewide all public lands, we listed as KDWP owned and managed properties, because that covers our leased areas of the federal properties as well as what we own as a state agency. It's just
could you say that one more time, please?
KDWP owned and managed. Department Lands and Waters is defined as KDWP owned and managed.
And what's the difference if we did that versus a blanket statewide public land?
Well, I bring that up not to cloudy the issue. I just want to keep consistent with what we have in other regulations.
No, I get that, and I'm good with that, but I'm just so I can get my brain around it. Is there a difference between, owned and managed KDWP land versus all state public land? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Would that exclude or add, or what would be the difference between the two languages?
Well, I guess for my clarity too, I wanted to make sure that you were including like the federal reservoirs as well.
Yeah.
That we do have managed through lease agreements.
Good.
Which
And
is
so
only
your language would make it even broader.
Which is only portions of those federal properties. There's still portions of those core lakes that we don't manage, but the areas we do would be included in the definition I just gave.
And Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong, they still have regulatory authority, the feds, being the feds, over those lands. And so it would be, while, as you brought up, Mike, they say they'll be willing to adopt our regulations, but that still would be up to them to adopt those regulations.
Outside of the areas that we manage under lease, correct, and would also include the National Wildlife Refuges, which would not be included in this. But to Mike's point, that, if we implemented this, then they would be more likely to follow suit and mirror what we did.
But if I'm understanding you correctly, Stuart, that if we change the language to all KDWP owned or managed properties, that would be a broader brushstroke.
If we simply called it Department Lands and Waters.
Okay, then I think we should change the language to match exactly what you just said. And then as the secretary said, the noon one caveat.
The other thing to that I want to mention, because it's been discussed with this topic in the past, is under that definition of Department Lands and Waters, it also includes WEHA properties because they're lease contractual agreements. And we've taken a position in the past to not allow some of these activities on WEHA.
Great.
So that would be a question that I would want clarity on before moving forward to.
I don't think we would want to prohibit them from Weehall. I mean, if they want to go upland hunt the rest of the day or deer hunt.
No, I think it's the waterfowl.
Yeah.
Strictly, right. I think because if they're, according to what they've put forth here, you can do all those other activities. Deer, you can, if you have a tag, if you want to go pheasant hunt, you can do that. But this would prohibit waterfowl hunting.
Jake, do you have any comments on that? We've discussed that before.
I wouldn't die myself personally on the WEHA property if you wanted to exempt WEHA property. It's not. I would. I wouldn't die on that hill today.
Right. I would hopefully prefer we exempt WEHA. I don't want to.
Okay.
Yeah, that has been Jake George, Wildlife Division Director. That has been the recommendation from staff, is to exempt the walk-in hunting access properties from it.
Then I would.
Thank you.
Continue my, with modifications to mirror that.
I'm not trying to delay this process.
No, I love it. Let's just get it
Want to bring out everything that's going to come up. If this moves forward into promulgation with amendments or modifications, I want to make sure that we cover everything that needs to be covered today.
Is there anything else we're missing, Stuart? Seriously, because we want to get it right.
Cheech has a comment.
Just of clarification, so whether it be the reservoirs like Perry and Melbourne, would your KW, Kansas Parks and Wildlife, would that encompass the lake itself, or would it not?
So to answer your question, maybe, there's,
Okay,
it depends, the way these core leases are set up, some of the lease agreements have a distinct line on a map
mhm,
indicating where our lease, our management starts and ends versus the core. But definitely, the wetlands that we manage above those federal reservoirs are under our lease agreement that we manage, and so they would be included as well. At some Milford, Perry, Hillsdale, the ones that were mentioned.
so,
That was part of the big discussion earlier is because there honestly is some question on some of those lease agreements, how enforceable would it be on the reservoir body itself?
okay,
So,
Well, and if we talk about everybody being off the, well, I guess it only applies if they're duck hunting, to be off
Right.
the water, okay.
yes.
Yeah.
So the all state land, all public lands would encompass those reservoirs as well, if that verbiage,
do we have a lease agreement
yeah,
as part of the lease agreement?
okay. I was just trying to figure out
Yes.
because I do hunt the reservoirs as well.
Right.
And I know that a lot of guys would then, if you excluded the reservoirs, again, you'd have
Right.
guys at 1 o'clock leaving the marsh and heading to the reservoir.
Right. And I know
Okay.
there are some federal reservoirs that offer up their own special waterfowl hunts too, that are totally separate from
Yep.
what we do on the core part of the property that we do not, that is not included in our lease agreements.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
if I'm understanding Stuart correctly, we're not exempting the reservoir. You're including it to the extent that we can.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
And can you pull back up the first part of that, Stuart? Was there another page to that? I thought there was.
That was the first one.
So what you have is phase.
I haven't talked about phase two yet.
Well, I'm just talking about phase one, which
Right.
we have talked about.
Right. Phase one is the one that we really, our goal was to get into promulgation today.
Correct. So when we're talking about, going forward with changes, the phase one first sentence would be commensurate with what the secretary said, stop hunting at 12, off the water by 1.
Right. So we would change it to non-resident waterfowl hunters must be off all department lands and waters by, or we could include and cease hunting by 12 PM and off the water by 1 PM during active waterfowl seasons.
Yes. And then these.
We would eliminate those.
Right.
Yes.
I just wanted to go through this, so we're all very clear
Sure.
on what we're going to vote on in
Sure.
a second. So all the properties there would all be stricken.
Right.
Okay.
So now we've cleaned up your motion.
Was there anything else?
Anything else you need?
I mean, we'd have to change some of these too, but I think as Eleazar pointed out, if it's moved forward with modifications, then we come back and clean up.
Right. And there would be one other place.
The
where you'd have to-
modifications are allowed.
There would be, on the next page, there's one other place where you're gonna, where it says exempt from regulation, you would have to add there, the walk-in public hunting.
Right.
Okay, we've got a cleaned up motion. Do we have a second?
I would second that.
Do we have further discussion? Either of our commissioners online have a comment at this point?
Nope, I think you're on the right track.
Share
I'm
phase
fine.
two.
Yeah. Whenever
Are we gonna vote on that today too?
yeah, I think we're asking for a formal, action to
I,
move it.
I would.
Not phase two.
Yeah.
Phase two, we're not asking to move forward into
But
promulgation.
I would at least like them to see phase two
Okay.
before they vote.
Okay.
Okay, hold the vote. We'll get
Right.
back to that.
Are we ready for phase two?
Yep, let's go.
Okay. All right, so as Mr. Secretary mentioned earlier, phase two of this would be to establish a preseason lottery draw for non-resident waterfowl hunting on designated public properties. Again, that's, we've got time to discuss that. Furthering the conversation that's already occurred for phase one, that's obviously something that we would go back and discuss again. We do feel like this would be a longer term approach for greater impact, not only for our waterfowl, but our resident hunters. But there is a lot more to look into this. Not every property can be considered equal or managed equally. Obviously, you've got a smaller property at Neosho versus a 20,000 acre property at Cheyenne Bottoms. Hunter use is different at those properties, so we're going to have to establish and plan for what that lottery drawing would look like for all the properties that we bring forth to include in this. And also obviously our licensing system and licensing staff is going to have to play a part in this, as they already do for our other draws with non-resident deer and turkey and things like that. So it is kind of an intricate process, but we've already been discussing it. Something we do feel is going to have a longer term impact. But our goal would be for this phase 2 implementation is to have it on the books by fall of 2027 waterfowl season. So with that, I'd answer any questions regarding that.
Questions on phase 2 from the commission?
Not a question, but more kind of just a thought. We already divide the state by zones for deer. I'm sure your guys are thinking along those lines where you would divide it. So we would have an idea of how many non-residents would be hitting the various opportunities.
Correct.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're looking at all that, and you know, Tom's integral, and Jake's staff and public lands and law enforcement, where everybody's in this conversation and approach to making things better here in Kansas. And so we are headed in the right direction. We've got some good data to help us make these decisions moving forward with this phase 2. It's just working out all the details and to have something, you know, solid and something that we feel like is going to be a stable solution in the years to come to bring back to the commission.
Works for deer, you know, so it makes sense that if you guys implemented that with different zones based on habitat and numbers.
And to that point too, Commissioner Mark, you know, even within those zones, like I mentioned earlier, not every property is equal. Some are larger, some are smaller, some have different habitat types, some have less pools to hunt, some have bigger refuges. There's a lot of things that go into.
So more tags in some areas, less tags in
Potentially,
others. But
potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot more to come there, but we wanted to go over phase 2 today as an approach that we are, you know, phase 1 is like I said earlier, I think is the first step that we would really like to see implemented for this fall 26 season. In the meantime, we're going to continue to work really hard to have a good plan in place for this phase 2.
Perfect. Thank you. Obviously, we're going to be revisiting phase 2 going forward with more information and details. If there's public comments on that at this point in time, you're welcome to make them. But obviously, this is going to be back in front of us over the course of the next 12 months. Very good. Okay, back to
phase 1.
Phase 1. We've got a motion and a second. And do we have any further commission discussion? I take a voice vote of consensus from the commission. If that's appropriate, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Thank you very much, Stuart.
Thank you for the input.
Thank you, Stuart.
Well, that was easy. Let's talk about trail cameras. Let's go to another easy subject.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Yeah, just like the non-resident waterfowl issue, I've stood up here and talked about trail cameras for several years too. So just a little history. We're in the 3rd season now, past the 3rd season of trail cameras being prohibited on public lands, and this was under KAR 115.825. And I've listed here some of the concerns that were part of the discussion that led to the original prohibition. Obviously, wildlife areas or portions of wildlife areas with multiple cameras that created a variety of issues, complaints from hunters who felt they were being spied on, user conflicts in the field, theft of cameras, disturbance of wildlife checking cameras, privacy concerns that include, you know, multiple users on wildlife area, not just hunters, private property concerns from WEHA, fair chase concerns raised both by the public and staff, and Midwest Association of Fish and Wildlife Agency discussions that have been ongoing for over a decade now regarding trail cameras. And just to note, here recently, Iowa's been reaching out to us because they are discussing prohibiting trail cameras on Iowa public lands as well. And all these reasons that I've listed too are just compounded because of the minimal public access here in Kansas. So just a kind of a brief overview of the review since the prohibition. We have received decent amount of comments from the public, calls, emails, and even some people that have shown up to previous commission meetings. And honestly, from the review, I think it's 50-50. It's kind of a split. Those that like the prohibition, those that don't want to see some changes. Obviously, the comments from staff regarding the prohibition were positive just because when you prohibit something, the issues lessen or go away on some levels. And some of those concerns for the initial prohibition still do exist. But after this third year, we've wanted to come forward and provide a recommendation and a compromise to maybe offer up additional opportunities for trail camera use on our public lands. And so what the recommendation is moving forward is, and I'm going to come back to this because here in the last few days, I've convened staff, including the secretary, to discuss this a little bit further. So the original recommendation was to revoke the existing trail camera prohibition 825. And again, as I presented in the previous couple of commission meetings, what we were thinking about doing is restricting the number of trail cameras to 2 per property per person that would align more with KER 115.8.2 under the blinds and tree stands regulation that restricts only 2 blinds and stands per person per property. But the conversations that we have undertaken the last couple days internally, when looking at the proposed summer month new season, the June 1st through August 31st, some of the problems, and concerns that we had and that I just listed related more to hunting seasons. And so I tasked staff with asking the question, and the secretary and I talked about this too, do the same problems really exist within these summer months where there's no active hunting seasons? And we all agreed that they were lessened. So moving forward, we've amended my previous recommendations of the two cameras per person per property, and we're not moving forward with that recommendation. So the recommendation as it stands today is any trail camera, both cellular and non-cellular, may be placed on department managed lands and waters. Again, Commissioner Mark, there's that reference. Department, we should probably add managed to my previous waterfowl definition. And maybe I said that anyway.
You did.
Okay. May be placed on department managed lands and waters from June 1st through August 31st. Each trail camera shall be marked with either the user's name and address or the user's department ID, issued ID number in a visible, legible, and waterproof manner. And in previous commission meetings, it was recommended to possibly require a reflective type material to be affixed to the cameras, and the department is not moving forward in adopting that in our recommendation. It looks like I've got a duplication here. So no trail camera shall be placed on WEHA or WEHA property at any time. Obviously, June 1st through August 31st, we don't have open active WEHA contracts, but just to get the point across, I wanted to keep this up there that the trail cameras would not be allowed on WEHA properties either. And then this regulation shall not apply to any trail camera that is owned by the department or a designated agent and is used for department operations or research on department lands and waters. And so with that, I'll stand for any questions.
You have comments or questions from the commission?
I'm pretty happy with the changes you made to it from what we had before, so.
Any further comments? Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to invite the public. I would make a comment. I appreciate the consideration too. We've had an issue that was brought to us from the public, asked for change. commission and staff, or the department reflected upon it and has brought something forward that, seems like a good compromise. I would, assuming we go down this path, it will be interesting, to see from our, law enforcement side, what kind of compliance we have, from the public of, especially the cellular cameras, when they're not supposed to be up. But anyway, that's something down the road.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate those comments. I'll follow up just a little bit. That was part of the discussion as well too. And quite honestly, having the restriction of 2 per person during these non-hunting months does add an extra layer of enforcement capabilities too. Again, the cellular issue, since they are in months where there is not active hunting seasons, I mean, you can hunt squirrels, but for the trail camera conversation, deer and turkey, big game and turkey, are not allowed to be hunted during these 3 months. So we discussed that as well. And to that point too, by eliminating the restriction on the number of cameras allowed, start off least restrictive as possible. And if we do find that we have enforcement or other issues moving forward, we can always come back and look at that as a group here together.
Makes sense. Yeah. Any comments, Mr. Miller? Imagine that. Please identify yourself, Sean, and welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sean Miller. I've been talking about this for about 3 years now as well. So I think we're all going to be very happy to put it to bed. I would encourage the commission to support this sort of cooperative agreement. I guess we've been talking not directly with each other, but what might be acceptable or not acceptable to various parties. And I think we're probably at a spot where I would like a little less and maybe some staff would like a little more. I think this fits really in line with what is both enforceable, provides department staff with the information needed to mitigate any conflicts or concerns that are going on there. And primarily at this point, I just wanted to thank staff for their patience and for their ability to work through these issues, because we've sort of gone from one extreme to the other and kind of back to what feels to me like a middle ground. And so I hope that this is something that we can move forward with. It'll end any of the fair chase concerns that we had by keeping it during the summer. And hopefully the cellular cam, for those who want to use it, sort of minimizes the impact on young wildlife during the summer as well. So I really want to thank the Secretary, Deputy Secretary, staff, and Commission for their patience on this issue. So thanks for keeping it. Thank you. Thank you.
Sean, I appreciate the research you've done. You've appeared at a number of meetings, both around Topeka and beyond, and expressed opinion and brought facts to us, and appreciate what staff has done taking a look at this, and appreciate where we're at today. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is another one that I am requesting be agreed on to move into promulgation today.
Any further comments from the public? If not, I would accept a motion and a second from the commission if we want to move forward on this.
I would move that we move forward as written.
I will second that.
Any comments from the commissioners?
Negative.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it very much. If we haven't worn you out, we're back to public comments again. So if you've changed your mind or have something to say, this is your opportunity. Once again. Mike?
So Stuart, the teal was excluded from this, the teal season?
Yeah, because of the timing of the promulgation process,
Okay.
we didn't, moving forward, we had that discussion too. We don't, overall evaluation, we don't see the pressure problems during the early teal like we do the regular duck season.
Okay, I was just thinking down the line, if somebody from Louisiana says, well, I could hunt all day during teal season just to try to clean that up.
Again,
Just to say all
yeah.
ducks.
Again, moving forward, if we do see a problem developing, I don't feel strongly that we have enough data and support for including the early teal season right now. And because of the timing of the promulgation process, that's why it was not included
Okay, all
currently.
right. I just
I have a question for you, Stuart. Would the phase 2, would that impact the early teal season either way?
Yeah, that was part of the initial ongoing discussions is what to include and what not to include. You know, could there be a early teal season draw versus a separate regular duck season draw? So that's part of this whole.
Yeah. Well, it's too
working
late to
process.
fix it this year, and you're gonna alleviate his concerns hopefully by the next season.
Right, by fall of 27 is our goal.
I'd be hopeful that, you know, going forward, once this is in place, the education process provides opportunities to people coming from out of state to Kansas. They can go waterfowl hunting in the morning, go upland hunting in the afternoon. They can get their lunch. They can go to public lands, private lands, CSAs and the like. But if they want to hunt all day, those options would be available, just not necessarily for waterfowl.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I was going to hit on this earlier in regards to the waterfowl habitat stamp action. As a reminder, those funds are protected by statute, and they're specifically protected for use only in acquiring, developing, or enhancing wetlands. And so if this measure does go through, that will significantly and positively impact our ability to manage more wetlands and the wetlands we have here in the state of Kansas, which will, in the big picture scheme, hopefully help with this issue as well.
Yep, very good. No more public comments. Any old business to come before the commission? Any other business to come before the commission? Meeting dates in the future. I think our next meeting is June 18th. I'm not sure where. Maybe on my.
I think it's Lindsberg.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
We looking beyond that now for the meeting August sometime? Is that correct?
27, is that right?
The meeting in August is set for the 27th, and it will be held in the Bicknell Arts Center in Pittsburgh.
Now and see Dr. Lister. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Look at that.
It's obviously, we made Delia happy.
Very
Yeah,
much
we're-
so.
we're
Thank
all
you.
go- We're all going to be virtual that meeting, I think, except for you.
When's the August meeting?
27.
Okay, I got it.
Is that all you need for scheduling right now?
We do have another meeting set after that, but no, it doesn't have a location yet.
Okay, what's the date we're looking at?
Should be November 5th.
That's
Like it at this time, anyone who has any
Early one.
opposition to that. November 5th.
Everybody have the calendars marked?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have. Is there closing comments from the commission? Any closing comments from the secretary and staff?
No, just want to thank everybody for your participation and hanging around this evening, and thank the commission for all your help with the legislative session and helping us get through these regulations. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I feel we've had a productive day and we've addressed some issues that have come before us that we made some good progress on. So with that, appreciate everyone attending today. Appreciate your time and thoughts. Thank you. Safe travels.